You have persuaded over 200 members of the KKK, both directly and indirectly, to leave the Klan and give up their robes. How and why did you start doing that?
Okay, well, first, people say I persuaded them, but I say I did not persuade them or convert them, that I was the impetus for them to persuade and convert themselves. I gave them reason to rethink that ideology. And when they did, they made the choice to get out and renounce, that ideology and go on a new path. So why did I get into this? We have to go back to my childhood, which was a long time ago. I'm 67 now. And I grew up as the child of parents in the U.S. Foreign Service. So I was an American Embassy kid, and I began traveling around the world at the age of 3 in 1961. My first introduction to school was abroad. I did kindergarten, first grade, third grade, fifth grade, seventh grade, all in different schools in different countries. Because you get assigned to a country for 2 years, and then you come back home. You might be here for a few months, maybe a year, and then you're reassigned to another country for 2 years. So I did the in-between grades back here. But my first introduction, as I was saying, to school was overseas. And my classes were filled with kids from all over the world because anybody who had an embassy where we had our embassy, all of their kids went to the same school. So this little boy here might have been from Nigeria, that girl there from Japan, that kid there from Italy, from France, you name it, from their embassies, right? And that's what I thought school was all about, this multicultural scenario. But the term multicultural didn't even exist back then. So to me, it was just the norm, right? If you were to open the door to my classroom and stick your head in, you would say, oh my, this looks like a United Nations of little children, because that's what it was. But whenever I'd come back home here to my own country, I would be either in all black schools or black and white schools, meaning the still segregated or the newly integrated. And there wasn't the amount of diversity that I had overseas. So, just because desegregation was passed in 1954, which was 4 years before I was born, schools did not integrate overnight. It took years and years, right? So one of those times I came back, we're fast forwarding, 10, I was in the fourth grade, I was age 10, and I was going to a newly integrated school in 1968. There were only two black kids in the entire school, me in fourth grade and a little girl in second grade. So consequently, being a fourth grader, I didn't really hang out with second graders. So my friends were all white. They're like fourth and fifth graders. So several of my male friends were members of the Cub Scouts, and they invited me to join the Cub Scouts. So I did, 1968. I'm the only black scout anywhere in the area. And we had a parade, and the streets were blocked off. The sidewalks were lined with nothing but white people who were waving and cheering and smiling and carrying on, until we got to a certain point in this parade route when suddenly, pow, I'm getting hit with soda pop bottles and soda pop cans and rocks and whatever else was on the street by just a small group of spectators, maybe 4 or 5 people off to my right on the sidewalk. When I turned to see what was happening, I saw a couple of kids, maybe a year or two older than me. I didn't know them, and a couple of adults who were yelling and screaming and throwing things, and I didn't know them either. But my first thought was, oh, these people over here, they don't like the scouts. That's how naive I was. I did not realize that I was the only scout getting hit until my scout leaders all came running and covered me with their bodies and then quickly escorted me out of this danger. And I kept asking them, why are they doing this? I didn't do anything. What did I do? I didn't do anything. I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. It was then that I realized that no other scout was getting special protection other than me. So something I had done, or for some reason they singled me out, and I didn't understand it. And my scout leaders were not answering my question. They were shushing me and rushing me along, telling me to keep moving, keep moving. Everything will be fine. So I kept moving. At the end of the march, I returned home, and my mom and dad were not at the march. They had something else going on that afternoon, but they were home when I got home. And they were cleaning me up and putting band-aids on me and asking me, how did you fall down and get all scraped up? I told them I didn't fall down. I told them what had happened. And so for the first time in my life, my mother and father sat me down at the age of 10 and explained what racism was to me. Now, Lily, at the age of 10, I had never even heard the word racism. I had no clue what they were talking about. That's why it's so important to understand my background. Racism was not in my sphere. I was around people from all over the world. Maybe we didn't look alike or speak the same language, but we went to school together, we played together, we did our projects together, we had slumber parties together. This, whatever my parents were talking about, this crazy thing called racism, they called it, did not exist for me. And it made no sense. My 10-year-old brain could not process the idea that my parents were telling me that there are people who would hurt me who had never spoken to me before, who had never seen me before, who knew nothing about me just because of the color of my skin. So I'm like, no, that's not possible. It makes no sense. And to prove to my parents that I was right and they were wrong, I pointed out the fact that my fellow scouts, my fellow classmates in school here, looked just like the people on the sidewalk. They didn't behave like that. My fellow Americans overseas, or my little French or German or Danish or Swedish friends, they looked like the people on the sidewalk. They didn't behave like that. So my parents were wrong. Color had nothing to do with it. Well, I found out later, yes, it did. And so that same year, and I remember it very clearly, on April the 4th, Martin Luther King was assassinated, and every major city in this country burned to the ground. We were in the Boston area at the time of this thing, right outside of Boston in Belmont. And Boston burned to the ground. My hometown, where I was born, Chicago, burned to the ground. Where I am right now, Washington, D.C., burned to the ground. You know, all in the name of this new word I had learned called racism. There was violence and destruction. So now I accepted that my parents were right, but I did not know why. Why does somebody do that? And I formed a question in my mind at that time, which was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And so for the next 57 years, because I was 10 then, and I'm 67 now, I've been looking for the answer to that question. So now to answer your question, well, I had bought tons of books, and I still do. I have a vast library on black supremacy, white supremacy, the Ku Klux Klan, the Nazis in Germany, the neo-Nazis over here. All of my books talk about it, but they don't give me the answer as to why. And when I would ask people, why are people like that? Oh, Daryl, some people are just like that. That's just the way it is. That's not an answer. So who better to ask that question of than someone who would go so far as to join an organization that has over 100-year history of practicing hating people who don't look like them, who don't believe as they believe. Can you imagine forming a group that practices hate? They exist. And so that's how I got involved in meeting up with KKK members. All of my books on the Klan were written by white authors. Obviously, they had an easier access to those people and less fear of retribution. So I decided I would become the first black author to write a book on the KKK. And I traveled, I started here in Maryland, where I'm living right now, right near DC, go up north, go down south, go to the Midwest, go to the West, and interview different Klan leaders and members and write a book about it. So my book became the first book on the Klan by a black author from face-to-face, in-person interviews. There have been two books written by black authors from way back, 1930s, 1940s, where each author detailed how he escaped a lynching by the Klan, but not from the perspective of sitting down face-to-face with their prospective lynchers and say, hey, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? So that's what I did.
So how did it start? Like the first week, let's say that you start talking to these people, like what do you, how are you getting there? Like what actually kind of happened?
Okay. So I've seen some Klan marches, right? I began getting into this thing. And so, you hear about the Klan's going to march or have a rally here or there or whatever. So I'd go to it and I'd look at them, and just observe them and see what's going on. Sometimes, they'd cuss me out or, for being there or, or whatever. And, but, that's what you expect anyway. Then, they're not going to come up and embrace you. So, you don't think so. But anyway, so then um, I got in contact with the leader of the Klan in Maryland. And I had now the guy who provided me with his number told me not to fool with him because his name was Roger Kelly. Said, don't fool with Roger Kelly because he will kill you. This guy knew him. And I'm like, well, that's why I need to see him. Why would he want to kill me? I mean, I don't understand this mentality. I want him to explain it to me. So he gave me Mr. Kelly's number and address on the condition that I not tell Mr. Kelly where he got it. See, I wanted him to introduce me to Mr. Kelly, and nah, I can't do that. So I had my secretary, who at the time, she's passed on now, but she was a white lady, and I only mentioned her color because I could care less what color somebody is, but it's important to the story. I figured if I had Roger Kelly's phone number because the guy gave it to me, I could have called him myself, but I'm thinking ahead. If I call Mr. Kelly and he detects in my voice that I'm black, he might, hang up and click. I'm not talking to you, and my whole project would have ended before it ever got started. So I figured if Mary called him, he would know that the voice on the other end of the phone line is a white lady. You can tell, and I know enough about the mentality that he would not automatically be thinking that this white woman is working for a black man, especially a black man who's writing a book on the Klan, because they didn't exist at the time. So I told her to call him. I said, do not tell him that I'm black. If he asks, don't lie to him. Tell him the truth, but don't even allude to it. Don't give him reason to ask. And my reasoning for that was, if he knew that, well, A, if he knew I was black, he might decline me. But B, if he accepted the invitation, in the interim, he might have different answers prepared for a black interviewer than he would have for a white interviewer. So I wanted to catch him spontaneous, candid, right? So that was my reasoning. So she called him and he agreed to do the interview. Didn't ask what color I was. So that was good. So we set it up for this motel room. And Mary and I got there several hours early. I gave her some money, sent her down the hall to get some soda pop out of the vending machine, put it in the ice bucket, put some ice in there, get it cold, right? I had no idea what this man was going to do when he arrived in my room and saw me. Would he freak out and attack me? Would he say, I'm not talking to you and walk away? Or would he come in and do the interview like he told Mary he would? I knew what I was going to do. I was going to offer him a cold beverage. Just like, if you came to visit me, I'd offer you one, right? So the way the room just happened to be, if you were standing in the hallway and you're looking into this motel room from the hall, you cannot see who's in the room. You have to walk in, turn to your right, and then walk around the corner, and the room is laid out back there. So until you're halfway in the room, you have no idea who's in there. So it's a little motel, right? So I took this lamp table, which is only, a small lamp table, and I put it on the side, and I took the table and put it in the most obscure corner of the room. And I put a chair on one side for Mr. Kelly, a chair on the other side for me. And I had a little black bag beside my chair, which contained a recorder and some blank tapes. I set the recorder on the table, all in hopes that A, he would come in, and B, that he would allow me to record. So, and then I had a copy of the Bible in the bag because the Ku Klux Klan claims to be a Christian organization. Now, I'm Christian. I read the Bible, and they claim that the Bible preaches racial, separation. Now, I've never seen that in the Bible. So I want to be able to, reach down, pull up my Bible and say, here, Mr. Kelly, please show me chapter and verse where it says that blacks and whites must be separate. So I'm all prepared, right? Right on time at 5:15, knock, knock, knock on the door. I'm seated at the table where you can't see me until you come in. Mary hops up and runs around the corner and opens the door. In walks what is known as a nighthawk. In Klan terminology, a nighthawk is a bodyguard, a leader. Okay, so a grand dragon, you would have the grand nighthawk. An imperial wizard would have an imperial nighthawk. Now, what's the difference? A grand dragon means state leader, like what you and I would call the governor. In the Klan, the head of the state is known in the elected Klan official is known as the Grand Dragon. Anybody on the Grand level is a national officer. A Grand Dragon being the top, a Grand Caliph would be like a lieutenant governor. All right. An Imperial Wizard is a national leader, what you and I would call the president, who oversees all the states. So if you have a chapter of your particular clan group within your state and in another state or multiple states, you need an Imperial Wizard in addition. So all the Grand Dragons report to the Imperial Wizard. So Mr. Kelly was the Grand Dragon of Maryland at the time. He would later move up to Imperial Wizard. So his Grand Nighthawk comes in, and the Grand Nighthawk is wearing military camouflage. He has the Ku Klux Klan insignia right here, which is a red circle with a white cross and a red blood drop. And over here are the letters KKK. And embroidered on his cap, it said Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. And right here on his hip, he had a semi-automatic handgun in a holster. So he comes around the corner, and he sees me and just freezes. Now, Mr. Kelly is on the other side of the corner, so he doesn't realize that his Nighthawk has stopped. So when he comes around the corner, he slams into this guy's back and knocks the guy forward. So now they both are tripping and stumbling around trying to regain their balance. And they're like looking all around the room. And I'm just sitting there, at my table looking at them. And I can read their faces. There's a lot of apprehension there. And I could tell, they were wondering, did the desk clerk give us the wrong room number, or is this an ambush? So I saw the apprehension. I stood up and I went like this to show I had nothing in my hands. And I walked forward. I extended my right hand. I said, "Hi, Mr. Kelly." I said, "I'm Daryl Davis." And he shook my hand. And so did the Nighthawk. So far, so good. I said, please come on in, have a seat. Mr. Kelly came in. He sat down. The Nighthawk stood at attention to his right. And before I could sit down, Mr. Kelly asked me if I had any form of identification. So I gave him my driver's license. And then he looked at it and he goes, "Oh, you live on such and such street in Silver Spring." Now, that had me a little concerned. Why was he reading my address? All he needs to do is look at my name, look at my picture, look at me, match it up, and give me back my license. You don't need to be reciting my address unless you plan on coming and burning a cross in my yard or something, right? So that had me a little concerned. I didn't want to let him know that I was concerned, but I want to let him know under no circumstances was he to come by for any nefarious purpose uninvited, right? So I said, "Yes, Mr. Kelly, that is my address. That's where I live." I said, "And you live at?" And I named his house number and his address, which the other guy had given me. And so that way I was leveling the playing field. I was letting him know, okay, so you know my address, I know your address. If you come and visit me, I might come and visit you. So we're gonna confine all this visiting to this motel room. And that was the implication of me reciting his address. He smiled, he nodded his head. I did not find out until months later. I had no reason to fear him coming to my house and doing anything stupid. He recognized my street name because one of his members lived right down the road here. My street runs through a couple neighborhoods, and his member lived over in the other neighborhood. So Mr. Kelly had to get on my street in order to go to that guy's house. So it's just pure coincidence. I had no way of knowing that at the time. Today, that same member sits in a federal prison in the state of Maine for committing a hate crime. All right, so anyway, so we get on with this interview, right? And every time Mr. Kelly would pound the table or something, he'll say, "Mr. Davis, the Bible says." If I didn't believe it, I'd reach down, get my Bible, and hand it to him and show me where. Or if my tape ran out of my cassette, I'd reach down and get a fresh tape. Every time I reached down like this, the Nighthawk reached up like this and put his hand on his gun. He never pulled it out. He just rested his hand on the butt of the gun. And I totally got that because that's his job. I'm the enemy. I'm the black guy. He does not know what's in my bag. So he's doing his job to protect himself and protect his boss. So I was totally fine with that. After about 45 minutes of me reaching down, him reaching up, the bodyguard, Nighthawk, finally relaxed. He realized there was no threat in the bag, and I went in and out of the bag. Nighthawk didn't move. So a little over an hour into this interview, Mr. Kelly and I are just talking casually, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there was a very short, very fast noise, like a that was it, just like that. And we all jumped because it came out of nowhere. And I jumped up out of my chair, and I'm getting ready to come across that table. I'll tell you about that in a second. I had all kinds of things going through my head. I could hear that guy telling me, Daryl, don't fool with Roger Kelly, he will kill you. So I had that going on in my head. On top of the fact that I'm a black guy and I'm sitting in a room with a Klan leader and an armed bodyguard whose job is to protect him, not me, right? So now this weird dude is making some weird noise. So I'm thinking, okay, this is it. This is what I've been warned about. He's going to get me now, so I got to do something. So when you fear for your life, you will do anything and everything to preserve your well-being. But there are only a few things you can do. Some people, they pass out, they faint because the fear is so great their brain cannot process it. And the brain shuts down and they fall out and faint until you wake them up. Other people, their muscles will tighten up and constrict. They'll ball up like this and start shaking. And they can't free themselves. You can be hitting them, punching them, kicking them. They're not even trying to block. They just like this. That's called paralysis by fear. I don't do either of those things, faint or freeze up. Uh, Another thing you can do is to run away, and that is your best option. If you feel that your life is being threatened, the best thing you can do is separate yourself from the source of the fear. Get away from it. Leave. That's the choice I would have taken if it had been available to me, but it's not available. I'm in a motel room. I am not armed. My secretary is not armed. The only person who I can see that is armed is the bodyguard. I can see his weapon. Mr. Kelly may have had a gun up under his suit and tie. I don't know. But this guy had a gun, and that's his job, right? How am I going to outrun a bullet in a motel room? So my last choice is to do what's called a preemptive strike. Get them before they get you. So when I flew out of that chair, I was on my way to diving across that table and grabbing the bodyguard, grabbing Mr. Kelly, and slamming them down to the ground and taking away the Nighthawk's gun. Because my job is to protect myself and protect my secretary. When I hit the table, I'm looking right into Mr. Kelly's eyes. I mean, he's only a couple feet away from me because it's a little small lamp table. And I didn't say a word to him. I knew he could read my eyes. My eyes were saying to him, what did you just do? Well, his eyes had fixated on my eyes. He didn't say a word either. I could read his eyes. His eyes were asking me the same question. What did you just do? And the bodyguard, the Nighthawk, had his hand back on his gun, looking at both of us like, what did either one of y'all just do? Well, Mary was sitting on top of the dresser to my left because there were no more chairs. She realized what had happened, and she began explaining it to us when it happened again. And we all started laughing. What had happened was Mary is sitting on the dresser. To her left is the ice bucket with the cans of soda in it. And the ice had begun melting, and the cans of soda were falling down the ice. That was it. You know, I won't say that this was a learning moment. I'll say it was a teaching moment. The learning would come afterwards. So the lesson taught is this: all because some foreign, underscore, highlight, circle the word foreign, entity of which we were ignorant, that being the bucket of ice, cans of soda. I mean, we knew it was over there, but we'd long forgotten about it because we were so engrossed in conversation. So it was foreign to us. All because some foreign entity of which we were ignorant entered into our little comfort zone via the noise that it made, we became fearful of each other. So the lesson taught is ignorance breeds fear. We fear those things of which we're ignorant, that we don't understand. So I'm accusing him, he's accusing me, right? If you don't keep that fear in check, that fear will escalate into hatred because we hate the things that frighten us. If you don't keep the hatred in check, that will escalate to destruction. We want to destroy the things that we hate. Why? Because they frighten us. But guess what? At the end of the day, they may have been harmless and we were simply ignorant. So we saw that whole chain almost unfold to completion. Completion would have been if the Nighthawk had taken his gun and shot somebody, namely me or my secretary, or had I pounced across the table and hurt one of them trying to protect my secretary and me. So it stopped short of that, and we all laughed and we carried on the conversation. And so I would meet with Mr. Kelly, regularly. I would even have him come down to my house. He'd sit right over here on my couch, and I'd sit on the chair opposite him at the coffee table. So for the first year, he'd bring his Nighthawk with him, right? And the Nighthawk would sit on the couch next to him. Sometimes the Nighthawk would get bored and pull out his gun and twirl it on his finger like this. While Mr. Kelly and I are talking, I'm just like, hoping like, man, the thing doesn't go off. But anyway, that one, so this went on for a couple of years. For the first year, he brought his Nighthawk with him. And for the second year, he trusted me enough, he came by himself. And but during those 2 years, he never invited me to his house. If I had to go, he lives one county away from me. So if I had to go to his county for something, I'd call him and say, "Hey, man, what are you doing?" If he said nothing, I said, "Well, come run this errand with me. I have to be up there." So he said, "Okay, I'll meet you at the kiss and ride or the park and ride or whatever." So, which is where people park their cars and carpool or something. So I meet him right off the highway, and he'd have his Nighthawk. Nighthawk get in the back seat of my car, Mr. Kelly get in the front seat, and we'd run my errand. If I had to take a music contract or a CD to somebody or something like that. So, and then we would stop and have lunch. Now, get this. Here we are, the head of the Ku Klux Klan, and me, a black guy, sitting down at the same lunch table, taking mozzarella sticks out of the same basket, using the same ketchup and salt and pepper shaker. You know, I've done it a million times. He had never done that with a black person before. He never socialized. I mean, he's aware of black people. He has a job. He has to work with them. But when work is over, he doesn't go to happy hour with them or go out to dinner or anything like that. So here he is socializing with me. And that had to play upon his mind. So after the first year, he was coming down to my house by himself. He trusted me that much. After the second year, he got promoted from state leader, Grand Dragon, to national leader, Imperial Wizard. He began inviting me to his house. I'd go to his house. I'd take pictures of his Klan den where he'd have his meetings. He began inviting me to Klan rallies. I'd go to these Klan rallies and watch them all in their robes and hoods parade around this big cross and then set it on fire and proclaim white power and all this other crazy stuff. And, you know, all of that, went into the book. And here's the thing. When you combine my childhood travels with my parents and my adulthood travels now, I'm a professional musician. I graduated with my degree in music and have been playing ever since. And also I do a lot of lecturing. So I've been to all 50 states. And when you combine these two sets of travels, adult and childhood, I've been to 64 countries on 6 continents. What does it mean? All that travel does not make me a better human being than somebody with less travel, but it does give me a better and broader perspective on humanity than somebody who has not had that kind of travel. Because if you haven't been somewhere and seen those people, all you can do is presume what they're like. You may be right, you may be wrong, but I've been there, I've seen them, I've lived with them, I've experienced them. Okay, so let me just give you my favorite quote of all time, then I'll continue. It's by Mark Twain, and it's called the Travel Quote. And Mark Twain said, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime." And that is so true. So I'd go to these rallies, and I was also interviewing other Klan people across the country. Some would talk to me, some would not talk to me, some want to fight me, and all. I've seen the whole gamut. So anyway, Roger rose to the rank of Imperial Wizard, and we continued hanging out and stuff. And over time, what I noticed was when I would travel, that no matter how far I went from our country, no matter how different or similar people would be that I would meet, whether they were right next door in Canada or Mexico or on the other side of the earth, right? Across the globe. Everybody that I encountered was a human being. And every human being wants these five core values in their lives. Everyone wants to be loved. We all want to be respected. We want to be heard. We want to be treated fairly and truthfully. We want the same things for our family as anybody else would want for their family. If we can learn, when we find ourselves in an adversarial situation or in a culture or society in which we are unfamiliar or uncomfortable, if we apply those five core values or any of those five values, I'll guarantee that your navigation of that situation, that culture, that society will be much more positive and much more productive, much more smooth. And it applies, we're talking about race right now, but it applies to anything, any hot topic, whether it's abortion, nuclear weapons, the last presidential election, the latest bombing in Iran, Russia, Ukraine, Gaza, Israel. You're on one side, somebody's on the other side. Apply those values, and you will have a civil and much more productive conversation. So I would do that all the time with Mr. Kelly, anytime I got to him. And he began responding to that. And lo and behold, one day he called me up and he said, Daryl, because, he and I would get together for lunch or dinner or whatever. He goes, what are you doing this evening? And I said, oh, well, I don't really have anything going on. Why, what's up? He goes, can I meet you for dinner? And I said, sure. And I said, is something going I could tell there was some kind of, anxiety or something going on in his voice. And he goes, well, I'll tell you, when I see you. And I'm thinking, okay, what kind of trouble has he gotten in, or what kind of trouble has he caused, or what? So I drive up there. He's about, an hour or so from me. And he says, um, I'm quitting the Ku Klux Klan. I'm like, what? you know? And he told me, he'd been thinking about a lot of things that I'd said, and he realized that a lot of things he was doing were wrong. And he apologized to me. And now he wasn't the first one that had quit, in my interactions, but he was the first big one to quit, in terms of status, rank. And I was shocked. I was very surprised, but I was also very, very happy. And today I own his robe and hood. And I have I've been doing this now for 45 years. So I have a ton of robes and hoods and swastika flags and all kinds of crap.
That was the most incredible story. Oh my God. I mean, do you think that it is your relationship just itself that did it, or is it your empathy and trying to understand their needs? Like what is the bigger kind of factor in getting them to leave? Is it just the virtue of just you being there and being that kind of representation, or is it how you kind of make them feel, I guess, or how you make them feel understood?
Okay. It might be a multifaceted answer, but I never, the media oftentimes has it wrong. When you see my name in the media, if you Google it or whatever, it'll say black musician converts 200 white supremacists or KKK, whatever. No, like I said, I did not convert them. They converted themselves. I was the impetus for them to do that. Okay, so when I first started this, I never set out to convert anybody. When you were a kid, you probably heard this. I know I heard it when I was a kid. People would say, a tiger does not change its stripes. A leopard does not change its spots. And that's true. That's who they are, you know? So why would I think that a Klansman or Klanswoman would change their robe and hood? Why would I think that a neo-Nazi would change his swastika armband or something? That's who they are, like the tiger and the lion. I mean, the tiger and the leopard. But I was wrong. A leopard and a tiger cannot change their spots and stripes. They were born with those spots and stripes. Those are immutable characteristics, right, that they're born with. A Klansman or Klanswoman is not born with that robe and hood. The Nazi is not born with that swastika. All of that is learned, is acquired, mentality, ideology. What can be learned can be unlearned. It may not be unlearned overnight, but over time. And so, like I said, all I want to do was meet these people across the country and say, look, you don't even know me. How can you hate me when you don't even know me? Please tell me this. This is all I want to know, for my book. And then you go your way, I'll go my way. We never see each other again. That's what I'm thinking. But that wasn't what was happening. We get into conversations, and guess what? If you spend 5 minutes with your worst enemy at opposite ends of whatever spectrum you guys are on, you will find something in common in those 5 minutes, and that gap is going to close a little bit. You keep on talking, you're going to find more in common. When you get here in this proximity, you are having a cordial relationship with your enemy. You might not be going to his or her birthday party or something, but you're in a cordial relationship. You keep on talking, you found more in common, and it closes. When you get here, you are friendly with this person. You may not agree on with each other on everything, but you're friendly. All right. And what happens is it causes a cognitive dissonance in that person's mind because they have found so much more in common with you than they found in contrast. And the trivial things like skin color, or whether you go to a church, a synagogue, a mosque, or a temple, begin to matter less and less. And then they began questioning themselves like, how can I hate Lily? How can I hate that person? We have so much more in common, and then they have to question their own path. And that's what happens. So that's number one. By applying those five core values, I think all those all that travel that I did in my life, and I still do, are stepping stones to what I'm doing now. If I had not been exposed to all those people and all those different cultures and been able to communicate with them, because I just consider these white supremacists another culture. It's not a likable culture at all, but it's just a different culture, right? And so I've lived in different cultures. I've vacationed in different cultures. So I'm used to dealing with different cultures. If I had not had that upbringing, would I be doing this today? Maybe not. Maybe I'd be trying to stay as far away from them as I could. And because my mission was not to get out there and get in their face, say, you're wrong. Give me that robe. You're the one who's evil and da 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 da. Um, I wasn't like all I want to know was an answer to my question. How can you hate me when you don't even know me? And I got a lot more. I got a friendship. I got people who wanted to unload and all kinds of stuff. Now, yeah, I got some violence too. I've put people in the hospital, put them in jail, for putting their hands on me and things like that. But fortunately, those were few and far between. But when you're dealing with somebody like that, you can expect you're in dangerous territory, so it can't happen. Um, but so when the first person quit, and I'll tell you about him, I thought it was a fluke. Like what on earth? This guy probably wasn't even believing in what he was doing. I thought it was a fluke. But then another one would quit, and then another one. I thought, wait a minute, something is going on here. What am I doing? Because certainly they've been interviewed by people before, and they didn't quit. So why are they quitting when I'm interviewing them? I figured it out that it was these five core values, that I was applying. I'm allowing them to be themselves. I said everybody wants to be. I respected them. I allowed them to be heard. I treated them fairly. Um, all these kinds of things. Now understand something. I did not respect what they had to say. I'm not a racist. I'm not a separatist, a supremacist, a nationalist. I'm none of those things. I did not respect what they had to say, but I respected their right to say it. Okay. And I think that played a very significant role in them. You know, I let them be themselves, and they said some very vile and heinous things about me and people who look like me, you know, and I just sat there and listened to them, and I think that kind of, freaked them out a little bit because they're used to pushing buttons and clashing. I'm just letting them roll on, and letting it roll off my back. So that played a big role. Also, have you heard the expression, one's perception is one's reality? That is so true. Okay. And here's where we oftentimes make a big mistake. One's perception is one's reality. We cannot change anybody's reality. And if we try to change their reality, we're going to get pushback. Their reality is all they know. To them, it's real. It may not be real, but to them, it's real. We may see through it because we know better. All right. But they don't know better. So to them, it's real. And if you attack somebody's reality, um, they're going to resist. And if you continue to attack it, they're going to escalate the resistance. And you continue, it's going to end up in an explosion. It's just like, if you, well, I'm sure you don't get into fights with people, but, if you ever seen a fight or two guys fight, it doesn't start with just one guy walking up and punching the other guy in the face. Usually some words are exchanged, and then it gets heated and gets louder, and then all of a sudden, bam, right? So it starts and it sparks and it catches fire and then explodes, right? So if you keep attacking somebody's reality, you're going to find yourself rolling around on the floor with them or something. So what you want to do is this: never attack anybody's reality, because that will set them off. They're going to defend their reality. Like if I look at you and tell you, you're a boy, well, I'm wrong. And if I keep telling you, you might smack me across the face because I'm attacking your reality of what you think you are. So what you want to do is you want to offer them a better perception. So let me give you an example. Um, I'll give you two examples, one hypothetical and one real life. Hypothetical one first. Let's say you have a little brother and he's maybe 8 or 9 years old. He goes to a magic show with his buddies. He comes home and tells you, Lily, you're not going to believe this. This magician on stage, he asked for a female volunteer, and 50 women raised their hand. He looked through the audience and picked out this woman, brought her up on stage, put the microphone in her face, what's your name? Where are you from? And then he had her climb into this long box and stick her feet out the hole at that end and put her head out the hole at this end. And then he closed the lid. And they took a chainsaw and went right through the middle of the box. Right through, it came out the bottom. He cut her in half, Lily, and then he told her to wiggle her feet out the hole. And she wiggled her feet. And you say, listen, it didn't really happen like that. Yes, it did. I was there. You weren't there. I saw it with my own eyes. You didn't see it. I saw it. He's right. You were not there. He saw it. He was there. He saw it with his own eyes. So how dare you tell me I didn't see what I saw? That's going to be his mentality because you have attacked his reality and you were not even there, right? So he's getting a little, edgy with you. And to prove to you that he's right, he says after this guy cut the box in half, he took the half with the feet sticking out the hole and moved that half over here to stage right and the half with the head and moved it over there to stage left. And then he walked over there and he spoke to the woman's head and she talked back to him. And then he brought the two halves back together. He said abracadabra, whatever, over top of the box. And then he opened the lid and she climbed out. He cut her in half, he put her back together, and there was no blood. And you say, listen, it's an illusion. No, it's not. I'm telling you, he's going to go off on you, right? So you don't want to do that because all you're going to do is just escalate him and make him mad because he knows what he saw, and you are insulting him by not even being there, but telling him he didn't see what he saw. All right. So rather than do that, because you know better, nobody can cut somebody in half and just slap them back together. He doesn't know that, and he saw it happen. So offer him a better perception instead of attack his reality. What you say is this: I hear what you're saying, but let me ask you a question. Do you think it's possible, just maybe, just perhaps, that when this magician asked for a female volunteer and all these women you talk about raised their hands and he picked one out, you think it's possible that the one he chose might work for him? Maybe he planted her in the audience. She knows the trick, and she travels all around the country with him and always sits in that same theater seat everywhere they go. So he looks around and then he zeroes in on her. And then when she climbs in the box, there's already a pair of mannequin dummy legs laying on the floor of the box that are wearing the same high heel stiletto shoes she's wearing and the same color stockings. And so she just grabs the ends of them and sticks them out the hole. So all you see are the ankles and the shoes. And then she takes her own knees and brings her own knees up under her chest. So her whole body is on that half of the box. So when the saw goes through the box, it never even touches her. And then he says, wiggle your feet. She reaches over and shakes the handles on those dummy legs. And so, of course, they wiggle outside the hole. And then when he separates the two boxes, he doesn't want you looking at those feet because now they can't move. She can't reach them. So he has to divert your attention to her. So you're going to follow him over here where he's talking to her head. Of course, she's going to talk back. Her whole body is in that half of the box. So he doesn't want you looking at those legs. So then he brings the two halves back together. She reaches over, pulls the legs back in, leaves them there, and she climbs out. And then your brother says, you know, that might be the only way that could work. So you've offered him a better perception, and it has resonated with him. So now he's changed his own reality. You didn't force him, you just gave him a better perception, and he came to the conclusion, oh, yeah, maybe I need to readjust this mindset. So that's what I do with these people. I give them reasons. So this one clan leader, who was an imperial wizard, is a true one. He had the largest clan group in this country, and I got to know him, and I knew him for a while, and I could tell he was changing. I go to his house, I meet his family, I play with his dog, his kids, and he was changing. If he had lived for another year, he would have been out of the Klan, but he was murdered. I knew him very well. I knew the murderer very well. I knew his whole family. And it was a very tragic story. So I went to his funeral. Now, his mother and father and his sisters, he had three sisters, beautiful girls. They're all adults, right? They had nothing to do with the Klan. And they didn't understand why their son or why their brother was involved. He was somebody who was not raised that way, but somehow he went down, the wrong rabbit hole or whatever. Um, they had heard about me, but they didn't know me, and they had no affinity for the Klan. And they were excited to meet me because they'd heard that their son was hanging out with this black guy, and they could see him changing, etc. So I talked to the parents, and they were very grateful. The father began calling me, like from once to twice, three times a week, just to chit chat with me, because he had lost his only son. And I talked to him, and one day I'm sitting right here in my living room, and my phone, my cell phone rings, and it's him. And he's crying. He's just bawling. And he tells me he has a gun in his hand, and he's going to go and kill the person that killed his son. We all know who did it. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I've got to think very quickly here because I don't want that to happen. I understood what he was saying. This person took his only son, and this person does not deserve to live. I get all that. I get all the emotion behind that. But I knew that if I attacked his reality, if I told him something logical, like, look, man, you're already an old man. Um, you go and kill this person, you're going to go to prison for 40 years. You're not going to live another 40 years. You're going to die in prison. He would have said, I don't care. this person deserves to die. They took my son, blah, blah, blah. He was that enraged, right? And emotionally, he's crying. Um, that would never convince him. His reality was this person does not deserve to live, took my son, and I'm going to take this person out. So I knew if I went that way, it's not going to work. So I had to come up with another perception. So what I said was to him, I said, look, man, the guy's name was Frank. His name was Frank also, Frank Jr. and Frank Sr. I said, look, Frank is gone. He's not coming back. I said, you've got three beautiful daughters. You've already lost your son. Now they're out in Missouri. This is where all this happened. I said, if you go and kill this person, you're going to lose all three of your girls because they're going to put you in prison. And they're not going to put you in prison in Missouri where it's easy for your family to come visit you. They're going to put you out in San Quentin, California or somewhere, or New York, Rikers Island or somewhere to make it hard for the family to travel to the other sides of the country to come visit you. You've already lost your one and only son. Do you want to lose all three of your daughters too? He thought about it. That perception is what calmed him down. I mean, he still resented that person that killed his son, but that's why he didn't go and shoot.
Again, another fascinating story, and in the vein of addressing and kind of trying to help change someone's perception. I think something that I struggle with a lot with kind of this work that I'm doing is the political incorrectness of trying to reach people who disagree with you. Um, I think that most people can be, or I have faith that most people can be redeemed. And part of what I'm doing with the New Populace is getting a bunch of people who come from different backgrounds, have different political affiliations under the umbrella of economic populism. You get a lot of people in there with, at times, dangerous uh, beliefs. How do you deal with the pushback, maybe from people in your own community, of like wanting to have faith in those people and wanting to reach people who hate your guts? Like how do you deal with the, I guess, the shame of wanting to reach people that society has deemed irredeemable?
So do you feel that you feel that you are experiencing the shame of wanting to reach them? I'm not clear.
Yeah, yeah. So like for example, I'll get a lot of comments because I talk a lot about corporate greed. I'll get a lot of comments that are very like anti-Semitic, for example. A lot of people
Mhm,
saying like it's the Jews, whatever.
mhm.
And you know, in my mind, like these people are, you know, that belief system doesn't really make sense to me because I think we need to address systems and not like groups of people where innocents can get caught in the
Right.
crossfire. But there's a part of me that says like, okay, I see why they feel this way. They want someone to blame for what is a really
A scapegoat.
hard time they're going through in life and that we're all going through. And maybe I haven't, or someone hasn't given them like the tools to have a maybe more kind of balanced view on the situation. And that's something I struggle with, where like I think the impulse sometimes is to like delete those comments or fight back. And like what I really want to do is like actually like call those people up and try to talk to them. But I think there's actually a social stigma associated with engaging with those people, and we should just kind of like toss them to the side. And that's something I struggle with this account specifically, which is trying to get a bunch of different people under the same umbrella. So it's a long-winded question, but I would love to hear your
Right. I got what you're saying now. Yeah, I have the same thing. I have people who are my detractors and call me all kinds of names for sitting down with the KKK and having dinner with them or lunch or even talking to them. They tell me, it's not my job as a black person to teach them how to treat us, and things like that. Um, what I do is I pull out my robes and hoods and swastikas that I have and say, this is what I've done to put a dent in racism. How many robes and hoods have you collected? And that usually shuts them up. But understand that people never want to be accountable. They always want a scapegoat. And so, they want to blame the Jews, they want to blame the blacks, they want to blame the Mexicans, anybody but themselves. There are plenty of opportunities, you can show them of Jewish people who have contributed to mankind, to the fabric of this society that has benefited them. Do they have a bank account? Well, Jewish people are the ones who established the banking system in this country. There are a lot of medicines, all kinds of inventions, all kinds of things. Um, what can see? We need to redefine the terms pride, proud, which means the same thing. The original definition of the term proud or pride is the feeling one derives from accomplishment. So let's say you got your college degree. You're proud of that. You worked hard. You got it. You earned it. Okay. You started this podcast, and now you have all these viewers. You're proud of this accomplishment. All right. So you can claim pride in that. But for people to walk around and say, I'm proud to be black, or white pride, or I'm proud to be Jewish, to me, that's nonsense. Okay. Because you did not accomplish being Jewish. You are Jewish because your mother is Jewish. You are white because your parents are white. I'm black because my parents are black. What have I accomplished? All right. So, because you hear a lot of people saying, I'm proud to be black, I'm proud to be white, I'm proud to be whatever. That's fine, but what have you done? Where is your accomplishment? I can say I'm not ashamed of being black. I'm happy to be black. You can be happy to be Jewish. Don't be ashamed of being Jewish. Okay. But people should give you baseline respect as a human being. Just give you, they don't know you. Just give you baseline respect. You are our fellow human being. I respect you. Oh, but then I find out, oh, but you invented penicillin. Oh my goodness, my respect goes a little bit higher. Or you created, something, some new software development in computers. It goes higher. So the more you have done, you have accomplished. You're a concert pianist. You're, you whatever you are. That's an accomplishment. My respect meter goes up. Okay, so none of us have to be ashamed of what we are. And, we always hear the term, I'm not my brother's keeper. Well, we need to be our brother's keeper. If there's something that I have that you don't have and it's going to benefit you, let me share it with you. If you see me screwing up and you know a better way, share that with me. That's how we build together, not by condoning, I mean by condemning somebody for a stupid reason, such as their religion, their persuasion, the color of their skin, or who they voted for, etc. That is just scapegoating. It takes a lot more strength to sit down and talk with somebody with whom you disagree than to run away and hide and cast aspersions at them or something like that. You know, so you keep doing what you're doing, and those detractors, they will come around eventually, because I've seen that happen. I've had people come to me and apologize for, the NAACP, our two of our local chapters here. The president chewed me out one time. How can you do this? We work hard to get, 10 steps forward, and you sit down with some white supremacist for dinner and you're putting us 20 steps back. And that's when I said, well, I got all these robes and hoods. They're no longer racist. They're even speaking out against their own organization. What have you done to accomplish that? So some people just want to have something to argue about. But you keep doing it because, you're a good human being. And let me say this, karma is a real thing. Karma is a real thing. You've heard the expression misery loves company. That's true. You find somebody who's miserable, they want you to be miserable if you hang out with them too much, because they don't want to feel miserable by themselves. But by the same token, like I said, if you put out negativity, negativity will come back on you. You put out something that's positive, positivity will come back on you. I'll give you an example. Let's say you are, where are you based?
Connecticut.
Connecticut.
Mhm.
Okay. So let's say, you're going to the beach or something and with your girlfriends or whatever, and you are just speeding down, down the highway and and you're climbing this hill, and right about the time you almost get to the top of the hill, a car in the oncoming lane comes over the hill and he's flashing his lights at you. What does that make you think? What crosses your mind? You see an oncoming car flashing its lights at you
There's a
before you
cop.
cross over. Exactly. There's a cop. There's something on the other side of that hill where there's an accident, construction, a big pothole, or police, working radar or something, right? You think it's a cop, okay? So before you cross that hill, you slow down and you come over. Your speed limit's 55 miles an hour, and you were doing 75, and you saw those lights flash, and you slowed down, and you crested that hill, and there's that cop with that radar gun, but he doesn't get you because you slowed down. So you are grateful to that person that flashed his lights. All right. But let's say uh, nobody flashed their lights and you flew over that hill at 75 miles an hour. There he is with his radar gun telling you, pull over. And you pull over and he gives you a $200 ticket. Well, guess what? Your beach vacation just got ruined. You're not going to be able to go down there and have a good time with your friends. So now you're all bent out of shape. You got a $200 ticket for speeding, right? So, and then he adds insult to injury. When you sign the ticket, he tears off your copy and gives it to you and tells you, "Have a nice day," right? After he's already messed up your whole vacation. All right. So as you continue on your way, are you flashing your lights at everybody in the oncoming lane? No. You figure that's their problem. You got your ticket. That's their problem if they get one. All right. However, if the guy coming over the hill flashed his lights or her lights and you slowed down just in time and you cruised by that cop doing the speed limit, that person saved your butt, right? So as you go down the road, you're going to start flashing your lights at people to let them know, hey, it's a cop, slow it down if you're speeding. You don't even know those people in the other lane. That person didn't even know you who flashes lights, right? But you're going to do the same thing because positivity promotes positivity. All right. So you keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a positive thing by helping somebody who has a negative outlook because he or she does not have a scapegoat to blame, so they make up one. And really, the real person that should be blamed is probably themselves.
It's very encouraging to hear because sometimes I wonder if I feel like for people who are interested in changing the hearts and minds of those who society is seen as like irredeemable, I wonder is it hope that's motivating you or is it people think it's like naivete? It's a very interesting it's just interesting to hear your response on that.
Oh yeah, you've got to go with positivity. And sometimes it doesn't always work, or it may not work the way you think it's going to work. But karma is real. You put it out there, it will come back to you. If you put out positivity, it will come back. It may not come back from the person that you were hoping it will come back from or that you expect, but it will come back. Okay. And you put out negativity, that will come back too. Maybe not from the person you targeted, but from somebody else.
Do you think why do you think people join organizations like the KKK in the first place? Something I think about a lot is like the crisis of kind of loneliness and lack of community and purpose that people are experiencing on some level. Are people just looking for like other people and some kind of like purpose, or is it something kind
There,
of
there are multiple reasons. Okay. Sometimes it's a family tradition. My grandfather was in the Klan, or my grandfather was a Nazi. My dad was a Nazi or Klansman. I'm a Nazi. My kids are going to be Nazis or Klansmen. So it's a family tradition passed down, right? Um, Sort of like, let's say, I don't want to compare it to it, but I'm just going to make an analogy. Um, some of my Jewish friends keep kosher, and I asked them, why, and they said, well, my grandmother did it. My mom did it. Whatever. It's always been done. I don't know why. I just do it. So it's something like that. They don't even know why. They just do it because it's family tradition. So, you find that kind of thing also. Um, but then you find people whose family were not in the Klan, and somehow they went that way, or joined some neo-Nazi organization or something. Um, it could be societal pressure from their peers. Um, like if you move into an area that is gang ridden or clan related, you got to, if you want to assimilate, you got to join. So you go to a town that's kind of clannish. You want to do business there, you want to be accepted, you join the local country club, you join the local chamber of commerce, you join the local KKK. Or some parts of Los Angeles, for example, we have a lot of gangs. You go on this block, that block is run by such and such gang. So you want protection, you got to affiliate with that gang. Other times it could be a economic thing. Let's take, for example, I'll give you examples. West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Scranton, Pennsylvania area. You have a lot of coal mines. Most of your traditional coal miners are white, and they go right out of high school to the coal mines. Families have worked in those coal mines for generations. My great granddaddy, my granddaddy, me, my dad. On and on. So as soon as they graduate high school or they drop out, they go right to the coal mine, and that's all they know is mining that coal, right? But then the company that owns the coal mine or mines gets greedy. They think, you know what? Those immigrants that just came into this country, came into our state, whether they came illegally or legally, doesn't matter. They'll work for that much money, and we're paying our guys this much money. So let's lay off our guys and pay these guys this much money, because this much money is a lot of money back in their country, right? So they lay off all these white people, and they hire these people who are immigrants. Doesn't matter if they're legal or illegal, right? Because now the company is saving money, and these guys are mining the coal at a fraction of what they used to pay these other guys, right? So now the white guys are out of work. They were not racist. They had not one racist bone in their body. They were happy people. They were working. They were getting paid. They were feeding their family, paying their bills, putting clothes on their kids' back. And now they're out of work, and they're not qualified to do anything else but mine coal. They've been doing that all their life. You give them a vacuum cleaner and say, vacuum the floor. They don't know how to do that. All right. So they're out of work. There's no food on the table. The bills are mounting up. The bank is knocking on the door for their mortgage or their rent or whatever it is, and they're out of money. The Klan sees towns like that, and they'll go to a town like that and hold a rally and say, the blacks have the NAACP, and the Jews have the B'nai B'rith ADL. Nobody stands up for the white man but the Ku Klux Klan. Your job's not gone. That job is still there, but some racial epithet has your job. Why does he have your job when your whole family has worked there for generations? You should be back in your job. Come join us. We'll get your job back for you. So these people who were never racist, they're thinking, they do have a point. My job is still there, and I got laid off. And this person who just came across the border has my job. Well, what do I have to lose? Sign me up. So they join that way out of desperation. Other times people join because they want to belong to something. They maybe come from a dysfunctional family. People want to belong. They want to be recognized. They want to be respected, all that kind of stuff. And so a gang offers you that. The Klan is just a big gang. Neo-Nazis are just a big gang. They offer you that. They give you a rank, give you a title, Exalted Cyclops, Grand Dragon, Imperial this, Great that, makes you feel important. And, we're your brotherhood, we got your back, and so now you're in this echo chamber, and everybody's looking, up to each other. And that makes you feel important, makes you feel like you have a family. And when you join these things, you take a blood oath, and that becomes your family. That becomes your family. So, there's that lure also.
Then what do we, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. It's just so hard not to ask like a
That's
million
okay.
questions. How do we intercept that? Like, what can we give people on either like a personal level or like national, state political level to kind of fill in the gaps that organizations like the Ku Klux Klan and other kind of other organizations like it try to fill in? How can we meet those
There,
people where they are?
there are many things that have to be done. Okay, not just one. Um, Start talking about this kind of stuff in elementary school. In elementary school, okay, don't wait for somebody to get up in age and their minds get formed and all this. Give them good history, give them good education, and teach them, that these things are out there. Like for example, um, you've gone to college, you've graduated college, right? They did not teach you in college that, they taught you in college, you work as hard as you can in these academics, get good grades, and you'll go out and get a great job, you know. Okay, and that, part of that is true. But they don't tell you in college that while you're on the college campus or high school campus, you're pretty much being treated equally as everybody else on that campus. In high school or college, you have just as much an opportunity to get the lead role in a play as a black girl or an Asian girl or whatever. All right. If you and I are in college together, and you got some part-time work at the college bookstore to help pay your tuition, and I did too, we both are going to get paid the same thing. All right. But that might be different outside the college campus in what they call the real world, right? Women are discriminated against just for being female. Women are sexually harassed just for being female. All right. I can work as hard as I can and get straight A's. I can be, valedictorian, graduate, magna cum laude, or whatever, and then I go out to get a job, and I'm judged on this, not on my college, scores and all that kind of stuff, or my qualifications. They just see my skin and already have a preconceived notion. One's perception is one's reality, right? So, oh, that's a black guy. We don't want him working here. Um, College does not prepare us for that. You weren't taught what to do while you were in college if your boss sexually harasses you or your coworkers. If that happens, you learn it. At first it hits you like a brick or like a ton of rocks, and then oh well, I guess I have to go to human resources and do this and do that and so forth and so on. But you were not prepared for that. We need to prepare people for reality because yes, we have to have these academics, and they you know, help us to understand how to do our job. But there are also other realities out there that there are going to be people out there who are going to discriminate against you because of your religion, because of your gender, because of your color of your skin, your ethnicity, or perhaps your political party that you belong to. Um, so we should start teaching kids that this kind of stuff does exist, and here's what we can do to combat it and not accept it. When you start doing that, you're going to see the change occur over time by the time these kids get to be older. So that's one thing. But always speak out about it. Whenever you see it, if you see somebody who's not Jewish, who's being harassed for whatever they are, and you say, don't say, well, I'm not that, so I'm not going to say anything. Speak out against that, and then you'll see that people who are not Jewish will also speak up for Jewish people that they see getting, experiencing anti-Semitic behavior and things like that. Because not only should we look out for ourselves, but we should also look out for others. So let's become our brother's keeper instead of saying, I'm not my brother's keeper because I'm not Jewish or I'm not gay or I'm not Muslim or I'm not Christian or whatever. We all are human beings. Your DNA is 99.9% the same as my DNA. And that also needs to be taught in school because race is a man-made construct. There's only one race, it's the human race.
And then last question. Do you think that in this incredibly kind of tribal time we're in America, do you have hope that we can get out of it? And then kind of the sub question is, do you think the internet is going to have a role to play in undoing all of this crazy tribalism and kind of combative group dynamics that we have.
You are already doing that through the internet by having these discussions. Yeah, the internet can definitely play a role. The internet, like many things, is a double-edged sword. It's like fire. Okay, we have to be careful how we handle it. If you tell me that there's no heat in your house and you're cold, I can bring fire and I can heat your house. Put some wood and burn it in your fireplace and heat up your house. If I'm mad at you, I can bring fire and burn your house down. So it can go both ways, right? So the internet is just like that. Depending upon how we use it, it can be the wild wild west, or we can reel it in. And you use it for positivity, spread out the word, get messages out there, and you'll find some detractors who are going to try to interfere with you because you are messing them up. They want to wreak havoc and create chaos. What do you call those anarchists? All right. Yeah, you'll find those people. I see a lot of them. Um, but you'll also find people who will gravitate toward you and say, hey, you know what? You're the voice I've been looking for. And you'll develop a core following of people who want to help. So yes, the internet can be a wonderful tool. Um, but I think we really have to focus on young people. And right now we're going through a thing where people are banning history, rewriting history, banning books, omitting things, not talking about them. That is the wrong approach. That's the wrong approach. Like, for example, back in the day, now, in the original Ku Klux Klan, the Ku Klux Klan was formed in 1865 at the end of the Civil War. All right. And it became massive by 1871, just in those 6 years. And violence was all over the place. All right. It got so bad that Congress got involved. And you can look it up. It's called the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. So Congress came up with this bill, this act that forced the Klan to go underground and tamp down a lot of the violence. All right. But before that, in that original Klan, there were Catholics, there were Protestants, and there were Jews in the Klan. The Klan was simply a reflection of the Confederacy. And there were Catholic slave owners, there were Jewish slave owners, there were Protestant slave owners. All right. So they were in the Klan. All right. Not all of them, but a lot of them were. All right. So when Congress intervened and put the Klan underground, it stayed kind of dormant until 1915. A movie came out called Birth of a Nation, right, by D.W. Griffith. And it glorified the KKK. So now there was a revival of the Klan, and it hit its heyday in the 1920s. In this new Klan, they kept a lot of the same thing, but they added a few more stipulations, and they changed some of the bylaws that you had to hold allegiance to the United States. You could not reveal Klan business to an alien. Alien is anybody who's not a member. Um, and you had to hold allegiance to the United States, and you had to believe in Jesus Christ as the Son of God. So, excuse me, Jews were barred at that point because they believe in Jesus Christ, but not as the Son of God. So they were eliminated from the Klan. Catholics were barred for two reasons. One, Catholics hold allegiance to the Pope, and the Pope is not in the United States; he's in Italy, right? So you're not holding allegiance to the United States. One reason. Second reason is if the Klan goes out night riding, in other words, lynching people and doing terroristic kind of things, where do Catholics go? They go to confession, and they confess their sins to the priest. The priest is an alien. So now you're revealing Klan business to an alien. So they barred Catholics, right? So it was just white Anglo-Saxon Protestants until from 1915 until the 1970s. And membership had dwindled by that time. So what they did was they opened the doors a little wider And so they began accepting Catholics, but no Jews. But now there was a Jewish guy, there've been a few of them, but the one in particular, his name was Daniel Burros, Burros. And he was a self-hating Jew. And nobody knew he was Jewish. And he joined the Klan and he rose through the ranks and he became the Grand Dragon of New York. And the New York Times discovered his Jewish identity and was going to write an article about it and wanted to interview him, and he freaked out. And then he went down to the Grand Dragon of Pennsylvania's house. Um, I knew this guy. His name was Roy Frankhauser, and allegedly he committed suicide in Roy's house. Roy showed me the bloodstains on the ceiling and where the guy had shot himself and all that. But Roy said a few other things too that led me to believe that, was it suicide? Maybe it wasn't. Okay, Roy kind of hinted at a few things, but anyway, Daniel Burros was a Jewish person who rose through the ranks in the Klan. I've known some Jewish infiltrators in the Klan who gathered intelligence, but we have to educate young people especially, and get them in the right frame of mind, for prepare them academically, but prepare them for real life that they're going to face outside their school campus. Because you wonder, well, how come I didn't learn this in school? What to do if somebody doesn't like me because of this, that, or the other. There's a lot of that out there. Why can't we teach that too? When I was first introduced to school, I was around people from all over the world. That became my tribe. This little Japanese kid, that Russian kid, that Czechoslovakian kid, that French or German or Nigerian kid, they were all these are my first classmates. So that's who I tribalized with.
Mhm.
If I liked them and we played together, we got along, then that was part of my tribe. And my tribe had all kinds of different colors and religions and whatever else.
No, that's
But
yeah.
when you're isolated, yeah, you'll gravitate towards what looks familiar to you.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's why when you take some diverse city like New Haven or Hartford or where you are, um, if Bridgeport, if you go to some school there or some company, and let's say the company or school is diverse to a certain degree, and the people, employees or students, are working together on the same project. Some of them might even be sharing the same cubicle. But what happens at 12 noon? Everybody goes downstairs to the cafeteria for lunch. Blacks sit with blacks, Hispanics sit with Hispanics, this group sits with this group. They self-segregate. Does that mean that they are racist or something or anti-Semitic or whatever? No. People tend to feel more comfortable around familiarity, right? So they just go to their little groups, right? Now, if you were to get up from your table and walk across the cafeteria and sit at somebody else's table, and they say, "Oh, no, no, you don't belong here. Go back to your table," then there's a problem, and it needs to be addressed. But we should do more walking across the cafeteria and stop self-segregating. Just say once or twice a week, get up from your comfort zone table and walk across the cafeteria and sit at somebody else's table that you don't normally sit with. I will guarantee you two things. One, you will learn a lot that you didn't know that's not in your textbook. You will teach people at that table a lot that they didn't know that's not in their textbook. And two, in the process, you will make a new friend. And that tribalism thing will go out the window because you realize you are a member of the human tribe, not the black tribe, the white tribe, the Jewish tribe, this, that, or the other.
I couldn't agree more. This was again just like so lovely. I think your work is incredible, and
Thank you.
it's such a privilege to talk to you honestly. This
Well,
was
definitely stay in touch with me, and sometime in the future, when you want to do a part two, we'll do that.
I would love to. I would love to. This was wonderful.